In this video, we're going to look at how to solve a radical equation. So we'll look at one here. And a radical equation is simply an equation that contains one or more radicals. Now these could be square roots, they could be cube roots, they could be a mixture of several. But typically the type that you have is, say, in a college algebra course or a basic algebra course, are those that involve square roots. So the procedure is basically to isolate the radical. Assuming you have just one radical expression, is to isolate it. So here we have one radical expression on the left side. So what we want to do is isolate it. So I could add 7 to both sides, cancel the minus 7 on the left, and then 7 and minus 2 will give me 5. So that'll give me this, adding 7 to both sides. Now once you have it isolated, you want to square both sides. So anytime you square a square root, it simply gives you the expression under the radical. So squaring the radical 2x minus 5 will give me 2x minus 5. Squaring the 5 will give me 25. So in that case, that gives me 2x minus 5 is equal to 25. Okay. So now here, we want to isolate the variable. We don't have a radical anymore, so now you can look at this as a linear equation and take it step by step. We'll add 5 to both sides. That'll give me 2x on the left side, and on the right side I'll have 30. So I'll get 2x is equal to 30. Now, all I have to do is make that 2 into a 1. So I get 1x. I've isolated the x, and then the number on the right will give me the solution. So dividing both sides by 2, dividing the left side by 2 cancels the 2, makes it a 1x, or just x if you want. And 30 divided by 2 is 15. So I get x is equal to 15. Now here's the difference between a radical equation, especially those involving square roots, and solving a polynomial equation. If you do all the steps correctly, when you solve a polynomial equation, which can have 1 answer, 2 answers, 5 answers, depending on the degree of the polynomial equation. If you do the steps correctly, your answers are going to check. Okay? But with a radical equation, typically those involving square roots, you could get 1 answer and it might check. You could get 2 answers, okay? Because sometimes when you square both sides, depending on what you have there, it could turn out to be a quadratic. So quadratic equations in general have 2 solutions. It could be 2 distinct solutions. They could be 1 solution, or you could have none. Okay? So quadratics will have either 2, you could have 1, which is repeated, or you could have no real solution. So you always want to check radical equation, especially those, like I said, with square roots. So go back to the original equation. You don't want to plug it into one of these here. You want to go to the original. So that's this one right here. So put a 15 where the x is. That's 2 times 15 is 30. Okay. Square root of, and then you have 30 minus 5. So 15 there is 30 minus 5 is 25. The square root of 25 is 5. So this will give me 5 minus 7. 5 minus 7 is negative 2. That checks. So that works okay. Go to the next one. Now this one we have 2 radicals. They're both on the same side. So again, you have more than 1 radical, but in this case we have 2. We want to isolate one of the radicals. It doesn't matter which one. Okay, I could isolate the radical that has the square root of 2x. That's the square root of 2x minus plus 3 rather, or the one that has the square root of x plus 1. Okay, so I'm going to isolate the square root of 2x plus 3. So adding the square root of x plus 1 to both sides gives me this. Okay, so basically I'm bringing this over to this side. I wind up with this. Now I'm going to square both sides. So when I square the left side, that's going to cancel the radical, just leave it with 2x plus 3. Okay, but when I square this is kind of like squaring a plus b. When you square a plus b, you get let me do it over here. When you square a binomial expression, okay, so you have a plus b quantity squared. Okay, that means a plus b times a plus b. So regular multiplication, we're giving the square of the first term. That's a squared. Sine of the middle term, and then the product of those two multiplied by 2. So a plus b, or 2a plus b. And then the square of the second term gives me a plus b squared. Okay, and that's what you do here. So the 1 represents the a, and the square root of x plus 1 represents the b. Okay, so squaring this side will just give me 2x plus 3. Squaring the left side will just leave you with 2x plus 3. And then on the right side, if I treat this as a binomial, the first term is 1, the second term is the square root of x plus 1. It'll give me the square of 1, which is 1. Now it's double this product, that'll be 2 times the square root of x plus 1 plus this squared, which gives x plus 1. So basically, we get this. Okay, so the left side squared just gives me 2x plus 1, and then here is the square of the first one. That's square 1 squared is 1, and then it's double this product. Okay, if you just follow your regular rules for squaring a binomial. And then this square of this just gives me the x plus 1. And then we just collect terms. So I'm going to bring the x over to this side. Okay, subtracting x from both sides, that gives me an x. And then 1 and 1 is 2. Take it over to this side. That's 3 minus 2 is 1. So that's going to leave me with this. Okay, the x comes over as minus x. 2x minus x is x. 1 and 1 is 2. Subtracted from 3 is 1 because you're bringing it over. Now I wind up with this. Now in this case, the radical is on the right side. So I go ahead and square it again. Okay, so depending on the type of problem that you have, the difficulty level of the problem, you could wind up squaring the equation once to get it solved. Sometimes you have to square it twice. Sometimes it gets more complicated and you might have to square it 3 times. So now in this case, what we're going to do is just square both sides. So this side squared, x plus 1 squared, is x squared plus 2x plus 1. And then this squared will just give me 2 squared, which is 4. And then when you square this part here, it just eliminates the radical and leaves it with x plus 1. Okay, so this is what we got. X plus 1 squared is just this, x squared plus 2x plus 1. And then here I square the 2, I get the 4, and then squaring the radical just eliminates the radical and leaves it with x plus 1. So now we're just going to multiply this out. See, this is a quadratic equation now, right here. Quadratic equation. So what we have to do then is see if we can solve it by factoring. If it doesn't factor, we use the quadratic formula. I did a video on that before. Method of completing the square. And of course, there's also the graphing calculator. Your instructor might not let you use the graphing calculator, especially if you're working in a test or something. So here what I do is I'll multiply here by 4. This will be 4 times x. It'll give me 4x. 4 times 1 will be 4. The 4x comes over. That'll give me minus 4x, and a 2x is minus 2x. And then the 4 comes over, makes it a minus 4, and 1 is minus 3. So if I do that, then this quadratic becomes this. Okay, I want one side 0. So then I look at this. How can I solve this? Well, again, there's the first thing you want to apply or use if you have a quadratic equation is the factoring method. If that doesn't work, then you go to the method of completing the square. Okay, so this one factors into x minus 3 and x plus 1. Okay, there it is. If you multiply this out, I wind up with this. Now, anytime you have a product of two factors equal to 0, that means one factor has to be 0, or they both can be 0. So, x minus 3 will equal to 0 when x is 3. x plus 1 will equal to 0 when x is negative 1. So your solution is x equal to 3 and x equal to negative 1. Okay, and always check. Okay, put a 3 right here. That's 6 and 3. That's 9. Square root of 9 is 3. And then put a 3 here. That 3 plus 1 is 4. Square root of 4 is 2. 3 minus 2 is 1. That checks. Let's try the negative 1. Put a negative 1 right here. Negative 1 there. It's negative 2 and 3 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1. Put a negative 1 here. That's 0. Square root of 0 is 0. So all I got is 1 minus 0 is 1. That checks.